Good morning, Your Excellency, Honorable Uhuru, President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Martha Delgado, President of the first session of the UN Habitat Assembly, Madam Maimouna Mohamed Sharif, Executive Director of UN Habitat and Acting Director General of the UN, Madam Joyce Musuya, Acting Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I want to express my gratitude to be here in front of you this morning to share with you some of my thoughts and my experiences. It's definitely an honor to be here at this very momentous event. My background is from the Gambia, West Africa, and my focus up until this recent times has mostly been focused around rural development. At heart, I'm a musician and artist, what I would call a cultural ambassador, and a representative also of young people in communities like the Gambia. Coming into the question of urban development, I came to ask two main questions. What should successful urbanization look like? And how should it actually be developed sustainably? For me, an underlying factor in both of those is culture, reflecting very much on the previous speaker standing here before. I hold very much the same values at heart. Looking at the ways that we construct, are we effectively reflecting the cultural values and the social values of our communities? Urban development is not just about transporting models that work in foreign countries into a continent like Africa. And in this, I'm speaking mostly for Africa since that's my center. It's about trying to find ways for this urbanization to communicate, to connect, and to represent effectively the cultural values that communities have. How can our construction do that? I've traveled all over the world and I've seen so many different urban expressions. And in Africa, I have found that we are not listening enough to the cultural values of our communities and representing them on the visual and practical levels that we see in urbanization. Africans at heart are communal people. How is that represented in blocks of flats with tiny spaces for communities? Socially and culturally, gender is very different in Africa, in other societies. How does our urban development reflect gender issues? Women do not occupy in many communities the same space as men in public spaces, but is that being taken into account? I saw this actually myself in one of the missions that I did earlier this year and saw the ineffectiveness again of a public space that by default caters only for men simply because we have not connected enough with the cultural values of the community that we are trying to support. We need to find innovative ways to include women into this discussion. In the Gambia, for example, women don't speak openly. So it's not a matter of waiting for women to come forward and talk about what they need because culturally they don't do that. How do we find ways to reach out to those women and find out intrinsically from the cultural aspect inside what they really need and how we will support that in development? Who gives us this information? Is it policymakers? Or is it the community? And in every aspect that I have seen, it has always been the community that will talk best for what they need and how the structures will support them. In the matter of sustainability, I found that development works in two parts, especially in Africa. We can talk about the material development, but we must talk about the mentality, the non-material development of our people. And this is something that I fight for daily in my country, in Gambia. It's a huge challenge for me to fight the mentality that has been so ingrained for so many years that stops our progression. We see new hospitals built, new schools, universities, beautiful shiny buildings, and yet there is no effort to find out what is actually going on inside those buildings. What is the education that we are giving our children? Are we creating critical thinkers? Are we creating entrepreneurs, people who are change makers? I'm not seeing that consistently in many countries. So it's not just about building buildings. It's about understanding what we are actually doing on the non-material side of development in changing mentality, especially, as I said, in the context of this continent. Many funding opportunities are wasted. I see a lot of money coming into our countries and no effect on the ground. Again, mentality is a huge part to play. I have set up the first academy in the country some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, which is the first cultural academy which is integrated with academic and mainstream education for young people under the age of 18. And this academy is dedicated to creating those critical thinkers, to encouraging young people to think about how they can make that change from the ground upwards, not from the policymakers down. Policies can be set, and yet we don't adhere to them. They don't take root in our communities, again, because we are not focusing on the power of change from the ground up. One 12-year-old student of mine last year spent her 2-week holiday break getting money from her local community following a program that we had at the academy, which was talking about agency in young people. They selected their biggest issues that they faced. They selected the things that they would change if they could change it. And over that 2-week period, she managed to fix all the holes in the road of her community. When she came back to school the following term, she asked me, I'm 12 years old and I achieved this in 2 weeks. What are all the adults of our community and our country doing year after year? I have seen beautiful examples of, in Kenya actually, last time I was blessed to come here and look at some of the urban development programs, and I saw some effective methods of change, but I saw again that that change started with the people, not with the physical development. I saw them developing the youth, supporting the youth, in understanding that it is you that holds the power to making this change. I saw bins in the street. For me, from the Gambia, seeing bins in the street that people are using is something I don't see. We did a program not so long ago where we actually started to create bins from recycled materials. And one of the reports from one of the young people that I had out there, when she was trying to tell people to not litter the streets and to use the bins that are available, she was met with the feedback, this is Africa. That's our problem, mentality. We also need to pay attention to the assets that we have in our community. We have what are called artists and musicians. I want to rebrand that into calling them cultural ambassadors, because that is what they are and that is what they should be. There is no art form in this world that can center around one person capturing the ears and the attention of hundreds of thousands of people. Why are we not utilizing that? Culture is innate to so many African communities, and yet we are not harnessing it, we are not using it, and we are not bringing it into the political sphere enough. I myself represent change as an artist. I represent cultural change. I represent educating our people about how we can develop our culture for a future tomorrow that embraces urban development as well as rural development. We have a lot of artists, young musicians in my village that I'm in, for example, young people singing about rims, their homies, chicks. But meanwhile, the mode of transport that they are using are donkeys and bicycles. So again, how do we solve this disconnect between what we want to represent, what we want to inspire amongst our young people? How do we repair that disconnect? We must embrace these people as cultural ambassadors, educate them, empower them. Let them be the people that can help us to change the mentality of people. Because the only way we can change the mentality of people is definitely from the inside out and not from the outside in. My conclusion is that without the support and agency of the population, the effects of change in policy can only be short-lived. In order to transform material development and policy making from a feel-good, box-ticking mission and statistical venture into solid, sustainable development, we need to invest equal energy and commitment into the changing of mentality by means of education, youth, empowerment, and reforming and harnessing culture for social change. Thank you so much. Asante sana.